Okay. So as an organization, Zone 24/7 lives by the motto, inspiring emotions. I'm sure all of you would agree that communications has a lot to do with emotions. Out of all types of communications, email communication is nothing new to us, and also it's nothing we can avoid in our day-to-day lives. Organizations usually train their staff in email communications just to make sure they know what's considered as professional. So today's Hansya session is organized with that purpose in mind. So let's start today's session, effective email communication. And while doing so, I'm sure you can relate your own experience to what's being discussed here today. Okay, so first we'll discuss what are the differences between oral communication and email communication. So first, oral communication is real time. You have almost immediate feedback. And most importantly, body language and tone also helps. We can use our hand gestures, facial features, and tone of the voice to communicate additional information than just the words we use. It saves time and it's less formal, and there is no written evidence. Because of that, it's hard to use for future reference. And the number of recipients is usually limited. So in contrast to these attributes, email communication has total different set of attributes. By nature, it doesn't have immediate feedback, but it does have written evidence, which means we can use it for future reference. And there are no non-verbal cues like hand gestures or tone. There can be multiple recipients, and we can use additional supportive materials like links, diagrams, and attachments, and so on. So in the next part of our discussion, we'll see how these attributes play a role in effective email communication. So according to a study done about the email communications, the information passed in the email can be categorized into 6 types. First is providing information, seeking information, directives, which means you are giving some directions or instructions, permissives, expressives, and invitations. We'll see examples for each of these types. The first type of information is providing information. You all can read this email. It says, "Hi Kanishka, please note that July 4th is a holiday in the US." So this is directly providing information from someone to someone else. So the correct response to this kind of email would be noted with thanks, or thanks for information, or thanks for letting me know, some kind of that kind of a response. And the second type is seeking information. In this email, you can read, what is the current status of investigating the SPI issue? So he's looking for some information. So in this type of emails, you will see questions basically, and there are 2 types of questions as well. So usually WH questions, which are related to seeking information, which means we have to elaborate the answer. And there's another type of questions called yes/no questions, which means he's simply expecting a yes or no answer. So depending on the type of the question, you can determine what sort of a reply you have to send. And the other one is directives, which means you are requesting an action or suggesting an action. So in this one, it says, please merge the I2C changes with the master branch. So these are called directives. The other one is commissives. Commissives means you have committed to do something, and in response to that, you can send this type of email. For example, attached here with is the datasheet of the Wi-Fi module that I promised to send you. Likewise, something you have committed to do, and those type of emails are called commissives. The other type is expressives. You are expressing your attitudes or feelings concerning something. So it can be something like thank you or apologies or something like that. So in this example, thanks for the quick response. It's an expressive. And the sixth type is invitations. So can you please have a quick call in the evening? So this type of things are invitations. So these are the 6 types. And why did we learn about these things? Is because in a real world email, usually these types are mixed into a single email. So this one is an actual email from a couple of years back. So let's go part by part. The first part is good work. That's an expressive, right? The second part, once you find the root cause, please verify it against any existing Microsoft errata. So that part is a directive. It's giving us instructions or directions. And the next part is a question. Depending on what it is, should we implement this in all other processes? So that's the question, that's seeking for information. So you can see in a real world example, an email is multifunctional, or there are different types of information contained in the same email. So when you are sending a reply, the proper reply should address all of these areas. That's why it's important to identify what are the types of information. Good response for this would be something like, we have to first acknowledge the expressive part. We can say, thanks for the appreciation or thanks for the encouraging words, and then go on to the other parts of the email. Okay, in this session, we'll see how to compose an email and what are the areas we have to pay attention to. Basically, when we write an email, we know we have the subject line, salutation at the beginning, and signing off at the end of the email. In between, we have the email body and attachments and so on. So we'll discuss these things one by one. Regarding the email subjects, main thing is it has to be clear and specific. So these are some bad examples for email subjects. Right? You can see just meeting. What does it say actually? It could be a meeting invitation. It could be canceling a meeting. It could be a follow-up note on a previous meeting. So we don't know what it says, right? So good examples would look like this. Instead of just saying meeting, you can say meeting minutes and the date. It's more informative and specific. And if you go to the last one, the code, instead of just saying code, you can say source release, revision number, this. So this is how you can make your email subjects more specific. And certain other things we have to be careful when we are choosing a subject. We should not introduce a new topic in the middle of a thread. When there are email threads going on with different people, it is a usual thing that the subject changes time to time. But at that point, what we can do is go for a new email thread rather than discussing the things in the same email thread. If you are following online forums, online tech forums and stuff, you know how harsh people are when some people introduce new topics in the middle of another topic, right? So we can learn from those things. And when a group discussion changes its direction, there are two things we can do. One is we can update the subject. So in a thread, when you click the reply button, you have this small arrow here, and you can expand it, and there's the edit subject option. You can go and edit your subject if you are sure that the future discussions are going to be changed to a different direction. Or else what you can do is start a new thread. So that's also one thing we can do regarding the email subjects. Next, we go to how to start an email. We start an email with a greeting or a salutation. Again, some bad examples of salutations. No salutation at all is bad for professional email communication. And the next two, yo, hey there, these are actually too casual for professional emails. You have to skip these kind of things as well. And the next one, it says Tom. So the problem with this one is it's the short form of a name of some person, short for Thomas. So it's not good if we don't know that person very well at the beginning. It's not good to go for the short form of the name. We have to always stick with his proper name, and if they allow us to use their shortened form, then it's okay to go for that name. And the next one is Hi John. As you can see, there's a spelling mistake in the name. It's not properly spelled. So a misspelled name is actually a form of a disrespect for a person. So we have to be careful when we are spelling the names, especially if we are not familiar with the names. And another salutation is to whom it may concern. The problem with this one is there's a possibility that no one will pay attention to this one. So if you want someone to pay attention and respond to you, it's good to spend some time first and see who is the most appropriate person that I should address, and address the email to that person. These are some of the good examples for salutation. So if a person has an academic accreditation, we have to acknowledge that first, at least in the initial encounters. So we can start with dear professor, and start dear doctor or something like that. And when we use a title like professor or doctor, it is customary to go with the surname of the person rather than the first name. So at a later stage, if they ask you to call by their first name, that's okay. Especially in initial encounters, we have to go with this kind of a respectful salutation. And also, hello, Albert, or hi, Thomas. These kind of things are very much safe and appropriate. And there's one other salutation that we most commonly use. Hello all, or hi all. So I'm not putting it as a good or bad example, because it can be both depending on the situation. So if you're actually expecting someone to reply to your email, it's not good to put hello all. It's best to select who's the most appropriate person to respond to this email and address it to that person. And there are some other types of email where you are actually not expecting any response. You are just passing information, just FYI kind of emails. For those kind of emails, hello all is okay. Sign off is the end of the email, how we finish the email. So again, some bad examples. Short forms of thanks and regards. These are not very professional in a professional email. And take care. This may look like perfectly okay, but there are certain cultures in the world and they interpret different things in different ways. So take care might sound like somewhat intimate or too personal in some cultures. So it's best to avoid this kind of things. Again, have a blessed day. It has sort of a religious hint to it. So we don't want to be enforcing our personal traits on other people. So it's best to avoid these things because we have many more safe options. So these are the good options we have. Regards, best regards, kind regards, thank you. And the last one, have a nice day, is a very good alternative for have a blessed day, because have a nice day is very neutral and it's appropriate in all cultures. Okay, now we have talked about the subject, salutation, and sign off. So now we are going to talk about the email body. So one thing I have to emphasize here is start the email with the end in the mind. So here is an example email. So let's take 30 seconds or so and read this email, everyone. Okay. So if you are Mark, if you are the one who received this email, when you are reading, you would see that in the first part, I am describing something I went through, sort of like a story. And then I'm mentioning some options I have. And at the end of the email, I'm asking him to advise on how I can proceed. So if you're Mark, you have to read the entire email to figure out what my purpose is, what I am expecting from him, right? So as opposed to this one, this is actually a bad example. As opposed to this one, let's take another 30 seconds and read this one. So I think you can see the difference. So in the first line in this email, I'm telling this is regarding the BMS sleep issue. By that point, we are narrowing down the scope by a significant amount for the recipient. So he knows where he has to focus. And in the second line, I'm telling, please read through the description and help me to choose a solution. So he knows what I am expecting from him. So he enters the lengthy description with the clear scope and the purpose in mind. So he can efficiently read this email and efficiently respond to this email. So this is what I mean by start with the end in mind. Okay, again, in written communication or email communication, we have the advantage of using visual stimuli when we need. In verbal communications, we don't have this advantage. So we can use point formats, bold or underline, or we can use tables, graphs, or diagrams to compact information into very much understandable formats rather than writing paragraphs about it. So these are advantages we can use. But we have to be cautious about the emphasis techniques we use. Take this last line, for example. So it one is too ambiguous, right? Too many emphasis techniques in this one. This all capital letters sound like yelling at someone. So those things are there. So we have to be careful how much emphasis we are going to use. There's always a balance. Okay, in this example, we'll see how we can answer questions in a professional environment. So in this email, the sender is asking me, hi Kanishka, what is the current progress of 1 motor driver issue, 2 image ADC configuration? So he's asking me 2 questions, and this is how I can reply to that one. Please find my answers below. So I copy his question first, and I have put my answer in a different color and with a different tag in front of it. KW stands for my initials. So the advantage of this is when we're having an email communication back and forth, when there are conversations going on back and forth, the other party also can add their response in different colors and different tags. So you can see how the communication or the conversation grew over the time. So these are actually accepted formats of communication in business communications. And this part here, the last sentence, we can send a release with image capturing feature by the end of next week. So this line is not something the sender asked me, but something I am providing in advance. So that is called preempt or preemption. That means we are answering a future question that the sender might have, right? So if you are working in the project for a long time, you would know that after the client asks about the motor driver and the image ADC, if they are ready, then the next question is, when is the release, right? So you can guess that kind of questions and preempt them before the customer has to ask them. So that is called preemption. The next part is you have to know who is in your audience, who is in the recipient list. So in a broad manner, we can break down the audience into 3 parts. Let's start from the bottom: subordinate, equals, and superordinates, right? So depending on the audience, the kind of audience you are addressing, you have to slightly modify your language. Let's see an example. So this is an email line I can send to one of my subordinates. Let's say he's a person who's working with me in a project, and I know he's fully committed to this project, this task. So I can easily say this type of a sentence. Let's discuss this today. It's appropriate. And if you're sending the same thing to an equal, which means another person like you who is working on maybe a different project, and you know he's also busy with his work, in that case, what we can ask is, shall we discuss this today? A slightly different form of the same question. Here, actually, you are giving some room or some flexibility for that person to respond. So he can either respond, yeah, sure, let's do it, or he can say, tomorrow works best for me. So you are giving some flexibility to that person. The next example is when you are addressing to a subordinate. Let's say you are talking to your CEO. And in that case, you can ask the question in this form. Do you think you can spare some time to discuss this today? So if you can read all these three questions, meaning-wise, they are all the same. But when you ask the question in different languages, it has some additional meaning as well. For example, the top one, if you take the top one, when you ask, do you think you can spare some time, you actually say some additional information. That means you're saying, I know that you have other things that you're occupied with, but can you spare some time? So that kind of information is already embedded in this type of language. So you have to modify your language based on the audience you are addressing. Again, if you are addressing a new recipient, it's a good manner to introduce yourself briefly. So depending on the situation, you can either mention your role you are playing in the organization or which organization you belong to. So those kind of things would play well in future discussions with the person. Okay. So when we are sending an email to a group of people, we add people in the CC list, carbon copy list, but we have to avoid unnecessary CC. The reason is people add CC for different reasons. But sometimes we think, okay, it's not good to leave him out of this email. Sometimes we think, okay, he helped this project at the beginning, so we have to keep him in the loop. So people are doing this out of goodwill, actually, but the downside to that is, if a third party is there in the thread, they may feel that we are kind of indecisive. We cannot decide who's responsible from our end. So that sort of image is not good for us. So that's why we should avoid unnecessary CCing. And the best rule is, we can think, when we're adding a person, we can think whether he can make a contribution to the conversation, add value to the conversation. If so, then we can add. If not, we can leave him out of the conversation. And if we need to update him, we can separately do that on our own. Okay, before that, I'll mention another point about CCing. So let's say you are replying to an email where there are multiple recipients. So someone is addressing you and you are replying to the email. So at the time you reply, you have to think who is the recipient. Let's take an example. So let's say Asanka has sent me an email with Pubudu in CC. And Asanka is asking me to share some document with Pubudu. He says, Kanishka, share this document with Pubudu. And my response to that is attach the document and address it to Pubudu and say, Pubudu, here's the document Asanka asked me to share with you, right? So in that case, when I hit the reply button, actually, by default, I am replying to Asanka, right? If I want to address Pubudu, I have to modify the to field and the CC field in the email before I send. So my reply is meant to Pubudu. I have to move Pubudu to the to list and move Asanka to the CC list. Most of us, I know we miss this when we do, but that is the best practice to follow. And also, when there are multiple people in the email group, there can be outside people as well to the organization. So be mindful about sharing sensitive information. And when you're adding a new person, please mention who you added in the beginning of the email so that everyone knows who's in their audience. And another thing is, you should not share other people's email addresses with unnecessary parties. So this may look like not a big deal because emails is not such a privacy thing. But the problem is those people, if they get to know that you have shared their email with others, they may wonder what other privacy issues you don't understand or you don't respect. So that's the real risk. And again, in email threads, avoid having two-way conversations. So if two people are conversing back and forth, that's not good while all others are waiting. So it's like they become like spectators like this. So it's good to have your personal conversations outside the loop and then bring the conclusion to the group email. And the next thing is about blind carbon copying, BCC. So I want to start this with the final note I have put here. The best policy is make sure everyone knows their audience, which means it's best to avoid BCC. And if you must, use BCC wisely, knowing what it means, right? So when you put persons in BCC, the people in to field can't see who are in the BCC field. But BCC people can see who are in the to field, depending on the email software, but I think Gmail is working that way. So it applies to us. And also the BCC person can reply to all, which means a BCC person can reply to people in the to field. So you can see the problem now. So that's why it's best to avoid BCC if it at all possible. Okay. Again, be mindful about the language. Here, actually, I want to talk about the written language we are using. Typing language, rather. So first, do not make your subjects look like spam. If you use all capitals like this example, or URLs like in this example, or too many exclamation marks like in here, so those things are typically look like spams. So you have to avoid these things in professional communications. And you have to spell check, grammar check, and do not rely on autocorrect. You know the problem with autocorrect. So it can mess up things. And be careful with punctuations. You know how the placement of a comma can entirely change the meaning of a sentence. So no need to give examples for these things. And also keep an eye for common misspelling. So if you see these blue color words, none of them are wrong. They are actual words. But because they sound similarly to our ears, even while typing, we can mix those words. Instead of you are, we can type your, right? Idle versus ideal. So these kind of mistakes can be there. So you have to be careful when you are composing an email. And of course, do not use what we call the SMS language or the short forms of words. It is also not suitable for professional communication. And few other things about the language we use. Do not use humor in professional emails, because you may be meaning something well, but the reader can read it in different tones, can sound insulting sometimes. So it's best to avoid humor in professional communications. And be careful with negative words like failure, wrong, or neglected. Because again, when the recipient is reading the email, they can be read in an angry tone. Also, you have to avoid blaming and incriminating especially in group emails. When there's a mix of people in the group, you should not put anyone under the spotlight. So for example, if someone mentioned a sentence like, this bug was introduced after Kanishka's git commit in the email, so that means I am under the spotlight now. So that could be uncomfortable. So instead, what the person can say is, this bug was introduced after the changes we did for the USB driver, or something neutral like that. It's more suitable, right? And most importantly, there's nothing confidential in email communication because emails can be easily forwarded. So you should not use any bad mouthing or any negative things in your email communications. We move on to the attachments. Few things to keep in mind is, first thing is, do not forget to attach. Actually, nowadays in our Gmail, if we have mentioned any hint about an attachment in the email body or the subject, Gmail has a feature which reminds you the attachment before you send. So you can use that to your advantage. And when you are attaching things, you have to use logical names. So if you can read these names in these two attachments, one is saying 1.png and the other one says a huge timestamp .jpeg. So these are things that we do because we are lazy, but the proper way to do things is give a proper name to the attachments so that the recipient does not have to download and rename. And limit the number of attachments. The rule of thumb for this is, if you have more than 5 attachments, you have to put them in a zip file and attach a single zip file. And the size of the attachment, usually the rule of thumb is limited to 10 megabytes, but Gmail now allows up to 25 megabytes. So depending on the situation, you can decide if the attachment size is not inconvenient for the recipient, then that's okay. And some general etiquettes as well. Reply in time. Don't keep them waiting. So for this also, there's an accepted norm in the business world. The accepted norm is 24 hours. Reply before 24 hours. And in some cases, 48 hours, depending on the type of the business. But as soon as, if you can reply as soon as possible, then that's the best. And when communicating with the client, you have to keep all your team members in the loop, especially when you are doing project work. So do not have personal conversations with the client. For this purpose, Zown 24/7 has project emails, group emails. You can use the emails for that. Again, we discussed this earlier as well. Don't introduce new topics in middle of a thread. And it is professional to use a signature. At Zown, we have a standard format for the signature, and you can add it to your Gmail settings, and you can make the signature inserted automatically for all the emails you are sending. And also, you should not be using emails for last-minute cancellations of meetings or interviews, or never use emails for devastating news, bad news. So if you have to do something like that, always pick up the phone. Certain things you have to always do. Whenever possible, add the email addresses at last, because you can avoid sending an incomplete email by mistake by doing so. In Gmail, we have this undo send option in the settings. So I find this very handy. So if you can use this one, even if you send a email with wrong content or the wrong recipient, you have a certain amount of time to undo and correct and send back with the correct information. And also, not just double check, triple check before pressing the send button. Check your email subject, check the email body, language, attachments, and the recipient list before you press the send button. Okay, so those are the things we plan to cover in this session. So we'll recap what we covered: the types of information, email subject, salutation, sign-off, email body, and the recipient list, language and attachments, and general ethics. So these are the things we covered. And so as this famous quote says, they may forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. I believe this is what we want to achieve with our motto, inspiring emotions. So with today's session, I hope you will learn something. And I have to thank Scientia team for organizing the session. Thank you all for participating. We can take questions if you have any. And most importantly, if you have your own experiences or ideas to share or to add to this session, please do so now. Okay, I think if there's no questions, we can wind up.
Kanishka, can I ask something?
Yeah, Isha, go ahead.
So Kanishka, I've seen in emails when there are multiple conversation going on through emails. At some points, if the CC list get to the maximum number, and we may feel that right after this point, these people are not relevant, and it's not necessary for them also to be in the mail going forward. I mean, if the mail continues. So is it necessary that we mention that we remove these people from the CC list from the next mail onward? I've seen people putting that minus mark, and these people are being removed from now onwards. Is it something we need to do, or it's something that we can avoid? Just remove the people and continue the conversation?
Yeah, I think it's good if we can mention, because if someone else in the thread is still assuming that these people are there in the thread, so we can overcome that ambiguousness by mentioning that they are no longer in the thread. So I think it doesn't harm if we mention that. Anyone, can you add to that answer, Chaturanga?
Yeah, could agree to Kanishka, because it might be, I mean, especially there could be a reason why some associates are being removed. So it would be better to highlight that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kanishka. Thank you, Chaturanga.
Any more questions?
Thanks, Kanishka, for the session. It was very, very relative.
Thank you, Chaturanga, and thank you, Pumi and the Scientia team for organizing this. Thank you, everyone, for the participation.